Oh my goodness, yes, absolutely. It is probably one of the most exciting things being a BDO that we get to experience is when we do these type of site visits. I mean, this is probably the only job where you get to walk out, see what keeps America going, see what small businesses do to operate.
Well, we'll all go to Vegas together and do a live taping. That would be
that would be awesome. From the center bar.
Absolutely.
Oh my God, the center bar. Shout out to the center bar. That's what we need funding for.
There's always a center bar, and I can generally be found at it.
So and they always have the nicest bartenders there, too. It's amazing. Like, no one's ever been like, oh, I love it. And especially because you leave the conference and, like, there's 70,000 steps to get up there. You're like, I need a cocktail just from walking up those steps. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the BDO Show, a podcast for passionate BDOs wanting to level up their game with advice and stories from battle-tested BDOs. I am your co-host, Emily Detour, and I'm here with my fellow co-hosts today, Alan Peterson and Ryan Kroge. Thank you for being with us. And before we get started, I always want to remind everybody to go ahead and submit your ideas and topics to the BDO Show at gmail.com. Just a quick email, and then we'll start going over them at the end of each episode. BDOs. Have you ever had a borrower bring in like a brother-in-law to do their life insurance? Doesn't end well, does it? We've all been there. When you require life insurance on your SBA loan, it's critical that you bring in a company that specializes in getting these policies in place for the SBA loans. The last thing you want is for life insurance to be the holdup. We all know that's a rookie mistake. SBA Protection Quick Close Life Insurance is the fastest, easiest way to secure the insurance protection that your borrower needs for their SBA loan. Their process is simple, hassle-free, and only takes a few minutes of your borrower's time. No lengthy paperwork, no complicated forms. They even have programs that don't require labs or doctor records for approval. And best of all, you will have the collateral assignment back in less than 24 hours. It's a no-brainer. Go to sbaprotection.com for more information or email Adam Bergen at adam@sbaprotection.com. So hi guys, welcome. Last week we had Credit Bench. Now this week we have First Internet. I'm so excited that it's us three. It's a nice little switch up. But again, we talked about travel schedules and, you know, the job comes first always, and you have to be committed to it. So why don't we go ahead and get into today's topic? Today, we're going to talk about the importance of knowing your customer, and we're going to talk about site visits. So as a new BDO, you will start to do these if you haven't yet. And why don't we go ahead and have Alan kick off the conversation?
Oh, great. That's actually a really interesting topic, Emily. So the good news for Ryan and I is that we do not have to do in-person site visits on every deal. So
how did you pull that off?
Well, the internet, we use virtual meetings. You'd never believe it. But, you know, there's other ways to do it. At my previous bank, they don't do it anymore, but they did. So for my first year in SBA lending, I had to travel to every single loan before it was approved all over the country, and to kind of just put eyes on the project and to meet in person. And honestly, I think that there was some value to it, but in the same breath, it also was not the best use of my time. If I'm flying to Coos Bay, Oregon from Florida, you know, that's a lot of travel time that I'm just totally out of office. Sure, I'm paying for the Wi-Fi and the flight, but it's never good enough. We all know that. And, you know, ultimately, I think that I could have accomplished that same know your customer aspect, which is so important, with a virtual call. Even on a phone call, I feel like I can get a good taste of character right away, right? And I think that as you work through the process, things become evident, and you can kind of really understand things. Now, you know, Ryan, you're different because you do a whole lot of folks in your actual national network. You go to your closings in person most of the time when you can, right? And,
right.
You know, that's different. But you also led nationally. You're doing deals elsewhere. I mean, you've been in the game a long time. Did you ever have to do site visits?
You used to have to do site visits all the time. Ever since 2016 was when I left kind of corporate banking, if you will, and have worked for national lenders. So since then, yes, I still do about 90% of my deals here in Metro Detroit, but the ones national, I don't physically have to be there. And fortunately, the internet has gotten so much more involved that you're able to do Google Maps and check things out, look at neighborhoods, look at buildings. Majority of the time, I found out they're not exactly up to date. But being in Detroit and doing most of my stuff locally, I do still like to do a site visit, especially after the first meeting and we found the need and we figure out a structure. Then I want to go out and because it really helps me understand the borrower, really kind of understands their vision, what they want to do, especially on acquisitions, because it's very rare that somebody acquires a business and doesn't want to change something. It doesn't always have to be physical, but they generally want to change something. And it's nice to go out there, see the property, see the business, see how it operates, and you get a much better feel for their operation. You get a much better feel for their vision. But more importantly, you will get a better feel for that operator. Are they a hands-on operator? Are they operating efficiently and effectively? And I know even though you do a lot of stuff nationally, Alan, you do some stuff there in Florida, some stuff in Tampa. So I see deals come across with your Florida state on there. So that's got to be awesome. And do you get opportunity to go out? Like what are some of the things that you see on your deals now on site visits and that you've seen in the past that you were glad you actually went out there and physically saw the business?
Yeah, I think, whenever I get the opportunity to go to a closing here, I always do. When I can, put my eyes on the project, lean on the wall on a real estate deal, for example, it's real. You can walk through it. I think that, I'm working on an opportunity right now in Tampa, and it's a commercial real estate purchase. The benefit is as you said, the Google map is totally outdated. We know that Tampa is the real estate market here is very, very competitive. It's really pretty wild. But what I like to be able to see is, like you said, what are they going to do, how it's going to work. And honestly, for me, regardless of the project, it's that extra face-to-face element of getting to know the character of the person, right? We talk about the 5 C's of credit. Character is the biggest one for me personally. I think that, it shows the kind of character of someone that's going to, what are they going to do when things get tough? Do they want to own a business because they want to own a business, or do they want to own a business because it's a dream of theirs that's well thought out? They understand how hard it's going to be. You know what I mean? And I think that I can get a taste of somebody pretty quickly, but in person, it's really, it can be a lot better, right? But that being said, I've had Zoom calls too, where I've talked to folks that are looking to acquire businesses. So they'll reach out to me to see if they can get like a pre-qualification letter, right? So they want to know, are they financeable? So I'll grab their resume, I'll grab their personal financial statement, and then we'll have a good conversation about what it is they want to do and why they want to do it. I'll tell you quite transparently, because that's the spirit of this podcast. I've talked to folks that were not the right people for what they were looking to do. And sometimes it's hard, especially being newer, is to walk from that paper or to say like, Mr. Jones, I understand what you're trying to do here, but I just don't think it'd be a good fit. What I do is I blame the credit guy. Shout outs to our credit guys who are some of the best folks I've ever had the pleasure of working with.
We bash underwriters on this podcast.
We love underwriters, by the way. Love them.
We love you guys.
Yes.
We text.
We love you, but you hate
friends. We're like friends with ours. I think. I know, Ryan, you are too, and
right.
we're pretty good group. But what I'll do is I'll say like, man, my credit guy is going to eat my lunch on this, man. You got to get a partner that's got something a little more transferable. Knowing that is the truth is the difference, right? And knowing your customer is a big piece of that. Know your deal, and we always beat that one in on this podcast because it's so important, right? But I think virtually you can get a lot done, and I'm glad that I don't have to travel to every single deal, honestly.
Oh man, I'm glad I don't have to travel to every single one either. But if I were to give some advice to a new BDO that hasn't seen hasn't done a site visit. One of my favorite movies of all time is Tommy Boy. And I know you guys know Tommy Boy, right? Great movie. Callahan Auto Parts, takes place in Cleveland, it's got some Detroit ties. I mean, just a fantastic Midwest movie. But the opening scene, so I was a young lender at the time. The opening scene is the quintessential site visit of the banker walking through the operations, walking through the manufacturing company, talking to Senior Callahan, asking him how things are going, looking at the inventory. And you're walking through there and he's seeing all the inventory, seeing all the parts, seeing the whole grant on how everything operates. But the one thing that stuck in my head when I first saw that movie as a young lender was he knew every single one of his employees' names. Go rewatch that scene. He knew all of his employees' names. They knew his names. He knew their kids. He knew what they did for recreation. There's a scene where he's talking to one of the forklift drivers and he was talking about his kid's birthday. It's just a great scene. And as a BDO doing a site visit, that's the type of interaction you want to see with your operator. That lets you know that your operator is not just there running the business, but he's involved. He's involved on a day-to-day basis. He knows his employees, what they do, what they're in charge of, what they're like. And that gives you the sense that this guy not only knows his business, but he's created an environment for his employees that's going to last a very long time, generationally. And that's kind of how that movie really wraps up, right? Is you got Tommy Callahan coming through, and because of the type of employees, the dedicated employees in that shop, they were able to hold it together and stave off the evil bank from shutting them down, right? So that's one of my favorite scenes that really kind of puts together the site visit for you. If you, as a BDO, trying to figure your way out, want to see how that looks, that's how it should look.
You know what else too? While we're on that topic, it reminds me of a site visit I did here in Tampa at a manufacturing plant, and it was like one of my first site visits, and I was like a duckling following around the owner through this plant wearing a suit, just looking so out of place. You know what I mean? So what I want to kind of get across too is, maybe you don't need to wear a 3-piece suit when you're going to visit a blue collar location, because all the workers were looking over like, who's this guy? Yeah, read the room is right. And by the way, they're more comfortable when you're in jeans anyway, in my experience.
Oh my goodness. Walking through a manufacturing facility in the middle of summer in Metro Detroit wearing a suit, I'll ruin suits. I'll absolutely ruin suits. You look ridiculous sitting there trying to talk to them. Oh, how does this CNC? I see it's got 4 different points of contact to come through, make it seamless. What's your downtime? What's your job time? While you're just profusely sweating buckets, trying to look and sound intelligent in that situation.
That's relatable.
Right.
And you guys have to like really layer clothing as men, so you're just drenched at all times. So
yeah, I sweat like I just got off the Peloton.
You and me both.
We talk about Peloton a lot. I hope they send us one at some point for free.
I gotta start using mine instead of just talking about them, but I'm trying, right?
We are all trying. I was going to ask you guys, in the infancy of your career, when you first became BDOs and your lenders required you to do site visits, did it like add some spark to you as your new career? Like, I cannot wait to go. It's exciting. I can't wait to get on a plane and start traveling. And you're obviously younger. So how do you believe it also put like more pep in your step towards your next deal after you came back from a site visit? Like, man, that was amazing to see this business coming together. Maybe you're walking through a construction site or you're watching the borrowers flourish and how they're getting everything together for you. And they're just really putting a lot of passion into it. So I guess, again, does it make you as a BDO when you were in your infancy and or now, does it still give you spark to want to drive your deal harder and like really let it come to fruition?
Oh my goodness. Yes, absolutely. It is probably one of the most exciting things being a BDO that we get to experience is when we do these type of site visits. I mean, this is probably the only job where you get to walk out, see what keeps America going, see what small businesses do to operate. But beyond that, you get to jump into the head of the operator, the entrepreneur, the ones that are keeping all the money flowing, keeping the jobs going, keeping commerce on its feet. You're actually meeting with different individuals that might be in the same industry, the heck might be doing the same business, but they come from 2 different school of thoughts doing completely different operational, philosophical things with their business that are working in both ways. And you not only get to witness that, but you get to understand how they do it. They get to sit with you, show you. I used to tell BDOs all the time, when you go and you sit down, you don't have to sell yourself. Sit down and just start asking questions. And I guarantee you the owner is going to have diarrhea of the mouth, because if they are legitimately passionate about what they do and how they do it, they will talk nonstop about their operations and what makes it tick and why they do what they do. And what they do is so much special and so much unique than their competitors. And it's just so cool to sit back and listen and get into the heads of some of these guys that just have some outstanding ideas. And then as a BDO, we get to go back, put the deal together, put the structure together, have a much better understanding of exactly what they need, translated from what they want. But more importantly, when you're sitting talking to your credit manager, you know your deal, you know your borrower, you know what kind of character they are, you know what kind of person they are, you know what kind of operation and vision they have for the future. And it gives you a better chance of explaining that to someone who's going to be signing off on your transaction, which is probably the biggest benefit you can have from doing a site visit.
And as a BDO, you gained a lot of knowledge by going there, and you can kind of hone in on that towards your next deal as well.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Oh, yeah. That's amazing. And, a benefit for me was when I traveled out of market, the rule was the lender, the BDO, whatever title we're going to run with, had to bring a senior leader with them. So I was in year one. I was putting together a pretty good pipeline. Things were going smooth. And everybody that I reached out to come with me to Oklahoma was busy, except for the president of the bank, who was the head of SBA lending, Tom Zernick, who, I'm a big fan of Tom. He taught me a lot. But I got some one-on-one time with the big guy, right? A guy that I look up to, like a mentor, that's able to kind of talk to me about different things. I had his undivided attention. Ask him about lending. Ask him about, why do we do things this way, not that way, and all these sort of things. And for me, that part was really valuable too. Like, to be able to, it got me really fired up. And, in the beginning, it's so exciting. Like, I'm wearing a suit and the bank's paying for my airfare. Like, this is awesome. And then, we get so spoiled. Our first world problem is like, oh, I got to fly, then it turns into, oh no, I'm in a hotel room. I don't have all three of my screens with me anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, I got to tell on myself a little bit, right? Because that's some first world stuff to be complaining about, but it's the truth. You get a little spoiled on the road when you're going all the time. So I think that that's a benefit. And now I just always do. I'll always try to shoot for a Zoom though still, like even though I'm not going to be in person, having just that next level of rather than just a phone call. For me, I like it. If I don't feel good enough on the phone, because character is going to tell me what somebody's going to do if things get tough. And that's what I need to know. You know what I mean? Because until the bank's paid back, that's on me and that's on my organization. What are they going to do, if times get tough? And that's really what I'm looking for on those calls. And I'd advise everyone to do the same. And if you don't like what you hear, I'll tell you what Javier George told me. No one deal is worth your career. You know what I mean? Right. I'd rather pass on a paper
absolutely.
than try to put something bad out.
But that's going to give you that feeling when you go out to that site visit. You'll know the good, the bad, and the ugly if you are physically there, because there are a lot of things that can be hidden from you as a BDO by not physically going on site.
That's the truth.
Well, what happens if, as a new BDO, you're working at a lender with a lender who doesn't want to send you on site visits? How do you get closer to your borrower? How do you really get into character evaluation if you may never meet them? So,
virtual meetings for me, phone calls, asking tricky questions, building rapport, quickly, letting them know that they're in a safe space and they can tell me anything, even things that they shouldn't tell me, things that will be to their detriment. I'll put a hot light on them, like I'm interviewing them, like the 1940s detective movies, right? But I mean, you still got to do it. But the fact is, I am pro work from home. I am pro not having to fly in every deal because I do a lot of them. Here's the facts. There's nothing like being in person with them, in my opinion.
I would agree with you, Al. It's really difficult when you're not there, boots on the ground, trying to truly assess the business. I think building a rapport soon, quick, virtual meetings, a lot of Zoom calls. Technology today has really allowed us to be able to get personable, actually see people without physically being in front of them. And I also think having things at your disposal on the internet are helpful as well. I mentioned before Google Maps. I'll take a look at a property, take a look at a site, see if it's still there, look at a building, see if I can see any type of functional obsolescence. Now, it's a little bit difficult because sometimes Google Maps doesn't update as frequently as you would like for them to do. But that's also why in the BDO world, in the SBA world, we actually require to hire people to go out and do a site visit and other third-party reports for environmental and appraisals, and they can catch things. And I will usually on an acquisition, depending on how many moving parts there are in that acquisition, I may ask them to have their CPA go out and really dig into the numbers and dig into the books on site if I feel that it's one that may be on the fence or have some red flags that need a little bit more digging into that I physically can't go there and do myself.
So it sounds like the BDO definitely is not the only person who's talking to your borrower or going to meet them in person. And you guys, like, who would you send if you weren't able to go?
Oh, so I've got what's cool about being in a national shop is we do have people all over the place, right? And I got a referral source down in the Atlanta market who gave me a deal 3-4 months ago. And we have our closing manager, our credit manager, and a couple underwriters there. Plus my brother lives there. So I've actually called and say, hey, are you close to this side of town on Atlanta? And my credit manager was like, no, but the closing manager does. So I called her up. She's like, oh yeah, I'll go check it out. I'll see what it looks like. I'll see what kind of business it is and see how busy. She went there. It was a landscaping company. So she went out there, checked it out. I was like, oh yeah, there's a ton of inventory. There's people there moving stuff around. So it's an operation. They're doing really well. It seems like it's buzzing and hustling. I'm like, all right, that's great. That's all I needed to know. I just wanted to see if it was something that was stagnant or moving. So having people nationwide that you can call on is pretty cool. Now, if I had something in the middle of Nebraska, I might be in trouble because I don't know anybody out there. But at least in some areas, if we can hone in on the people that we know in that area, referral sources, people we work with, people we trust, that's helpful as well.
Like, hey, go take a walk.
There's also services too. Like in closing, you can order, site visits where people will kind of go and give it a litmus test if there's nobody around. You know what I mean? That's how they kind of solve for that as far as like the physical, somebody being there, right? But it's always different, right? Every bank has a different policy on it. And, it's at their discretion. I would say if you're new and you're coming up in a place where you do site visits, go and enjoy it and get as much out of it as you can. Don't be afraid to ask hard questions. And don't just be there laying down because you're trying to get a deal done. Really find out what's going on there, because you're doing yourself a disservice and you're wasting the trip unless you get enough out of it that you can really communicate effectively to your credit department. And then if you're new and you're a place where you do not require it, I'd advise kind of taking a similar tactic, but don't be afraid of Zoom. You can do all sorts of other things and be a Google detective if you want, and ask those kind of questions of whatever you find.
What about vendors? Because we touched on hiring vendors to do site visits if we're not available to go. Do you prep your borrower like, hey, some random person's going to call and make an appointment that you don't know, you've never talked to, and they're just going to walk around and take pictures of all your things? Do you have to kind of prep them and get them ready for that? Or does it feel impersonal?
Well, it depends. I mean, if you want to have a good time with it, you don't tell them at all, and then you go, oh, yeah.
Hey, there's a guy who claims to be from the bank here. He wants to go check out our sensitive machinery, our top secret, production line.
Yeah. He asked if we had a bathroom. What?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. He's got a camera. I'm not letting him in.
We have. You give them a heads up too, because we still middleman the coordination between the bank, the third party visit company, and the borrower, right? So they do get an appropriate heads up, even though it's funny to imagine that they don't.
I was just going to say, I try to, if I've got a broker that's boots on the ground in that area, I try to give them the heads up and have the person who's doing the site visit call them, because normally they understand how the process works, so they can actually be there to coordinate it all and let everybody know appropriately. But otherwise, I'm with
Yeah.
Alan. I try to be the middleman and give him a heads up so you don't get those weird calls.
Alan's not telling people. He wants them to be freaked out.
Surprise. Yeah.
Speaking of surprises, have you guys ever done a site visit and you were like either surprised in a good way or surprised in a horrible way?
Yes. I've actually got,
I had a feeling.
I've got 2 instances that I was thinking about when we were talking about this topic today. So one, I was a junior lender. This is almost 20 years ago. And I was with a senior lender and I was doing an SBA piece and he was doing a line of credit. Well, the line of credit required what's known as a field audit in certain realms. And this was a boat dealer, all right, off of Lake Huron. And it was a new boat dealer. So he was doing a floor plan line for them, for their boats. And I was doing a 504 on the building. And I was doing a 7A for some equipment and some other stuff. So it was a sizable deal. We went out there and took a look at it while they were doing the field audit. I wanted to tag along because I had never done a field audit. I wanted to learn what it was.
And there was boats.
And there was boats. And we had one other lender that was going out as well. So there were 3 of us total. And then we met the vendor out there. And the way the process worked is we stood on one side of the massive dealership and they were bringing the boats along. We were checking them out, make, model, and then registration number because they put the registration right on the bow, right? And we're looking at the inventory list and he's checking them off. So I'm checking out all these really nice boats that are great. And they were going around the back. Well, the third guy that was with us had to go use the bathroom. He excused himself, took off. And about like 15, 20 minutes later, he comes running back. He's like, stop. We've got an issue. And we're like, what's going on? And then we see the owner run out.
I thought you were going to say he took a...
No.
I thought you were going to say he went to the bathroom on the boat.
That would actually be hilarious, but this is worse. So the other owner comes running out saying, no, this is not what you think. This is not what it looks like. We were just trying to. And he's like, no, we just saw it. Apparently they specialized in certain boats that they were selling, and then 90% of them all looked alike. And what they were doing is as they were rolling them around the back, they were taking the registration number off and putting a new registration number on. So they had about a quarter of the inventory that they said that they had,
claimed.
and they were rolling them around the building in a big circle as we're standing on one side checking them off. Ones that looked alike, they were just changing a couple parts off here and there, taking the registration, putting a new registration on and slapping them around. And the senior lender said, all right, we're done. We're killing the deal. We're out of here.
That's bananas.
And that is called a deal in Metro Detroit.
Yeah, that's called a Metro Detroit deal. Send them my way. I'll take care of them.
Stuff is going down in Detroit.
Oh my goodness.
Dude, that is so shady. So what did you guys do?
We killed it. We killed the deal right there because what we were doing is we were taking them out another bank. We were getting them a larger floor line. I was getting them a better rate term on a 504, and I was giving them some additional capital and some additional lines for their docks, equipment for their launching docks on a 7A. So we were helping them out with a lot of capital. Unbeknownst to us, they were just about to get kicked out of the other bank. But there were no signs of that because cash flow was looking good. Everything was looking well, but they were cooking the books, having a higher level of inventory on their financial statements as opposed to what was really on there. So physically going out, doing a field audit, checking to see what they had out there, pretty critically important, especially if you're
100% worth it.
If you're doing anything with any type of business that has inventory, whether it's retail, manufacturing, whatever the case may be, you look at that balance sheet and it has one number, you better go out there and take a look and see if you understand that inventory and they've got something out there that could be close to that, or else they're just cooking books. They're trying to put one over on you. And that's usually a sign of financial trouble for the operation too.
I mean, I expected a crazy story out of you, but I did not expect something like that.
I've got one other one that happened about 10 years ago. So here's another one that happened about 10 years ago, which is also critically important why you go on site to check things out. So I had a broker that I had just met for the first time at one of those mixers. He was a residential guy trying to get into the commercial. I mean, you guys all know the situation, right? And so he calls me. He's like, I got this guy. He's trying to buy a bar and grill. It's called Bev's Lounge. It's on the east side of Detroit. It's for, I think it was like 600,000, somewhere under $1 million. Great operations. Here's the financials. I'm like, great. Wow. Their liquor is good. Their food sales are kind of stink. I mean, their food was okay, but their liquor and beer and everything. So I'm like, all right, this is your typical East Side hole in the wall bar. I look it up on, get some images on it, and they're old images because at the time Google wasn't always up to date, but it looked like a bar, said Bev's Lounge on it, this and that, but they were weird photos. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go check this place out. I pull up. Now we would have found this out in closing. All right. But it would have cost. I walk up and it was very unassuming, no windows, hole in the wall. I'm like, okay, park my car, go inside. And there's a stage going around the whole outside of it with a couple poles. And so I stop and I look at the guy. I'm like, does this wouldn't happen to have a burlesque license, would it? He goes, oh, why, yes, it does. Is that going to be an issue?
Yes.
I was like, yeah, I think that's going to be an issue under SBA guidelines. I'm sorry. I can't operate this thing. Now, we would have found out when that changes when that changes hands, but it's good to know those type of things up front before, at the time I was in a loan committee, before going to loan committee and trying to present this to somebody. Although if somebody turns red at the table, they'll know what it is and you can, point them out too.
That's incredible.
Yeah. I love that. I got nothing like that. My favorite thing was that Oklahoma trip it was like furniture and various retail. The guy had a bunch of locations and we were with the owner, but me and the bank president had walked in first. And the general, like the floor manager came up and was like, hey, you guys looking to, buy anything or whatever? And we're like, oh no, we're waiting for your boss. Essentially, he's like, and the guy's just like, all right, well, if you're not spending any money, I'm going to go talk to somebody else. It was just kind of funny to get humbled, right? Because he was not impressed with the two guys in the suits. He wanted to grind. And you know what? I thought that was awesome.
That is awesome.
That is really cool.
I love
Let's try to sell some furniture. Yeah,
we could talk about this for hours, I bet.
Oh, I got a bunch of stories. I wrote a couple of them down, but to remind me of some of the details from earlier today. But I've got quite a bit. Over 25 years in Metro Detroit, you see some stuff.
I think that when we have Chris and Sterling back, maybe we'll have to get a good episode going about site visits, because apparently this was a fun one. But I do want to ask you guys if I can read one of our writing questions, if you don't mind. I know that these are fun.
Oh, please do. This is my favorite segment of the show. One of these times we are going to have this segment sponsored by somebody. They will do write-in sponsored by
Peloton.
Yeah, there you go.
And what is it? Ocean Sushi, Prime Sushi. What do you guys call it?
Ocean Prime.
Ocean Prime.
Ocean Prime. Come down to Ocean Prime. We have the Sterling. We have the Sterling table already reserved.
Awesome.
The birdsong wing of Ocean Prime.
Right. The birdsong on the side of the bar.
I'm so bad at it. You guys are so much better at it than me. All right, so let's get into the question real quick. So this person wrote in and said, "Hello, congrats on the podcast. The topic I wanted to hear about was, can you guys talk about some of the challenging deals that you put together, and how did you overcome those challenges?" Alan?
Sure. I mean, my most recent closing was super challenging. This was a business acquisition where the seller was in the middle of international travel for the vast majority of the process. So while we were trying to get things like, who am I? I'm asking for interim financials. I know that's a really crazy thing to be requesting. It was just taking forever. It was challenging. But the way that I sort of dealt with that specifically on that deal, and that's not necessarily a structure problem. I know that I've got plenty of those too, but just this one's fresh on my mind, was just staying on top of it, like helping the closer a lot drive the deal. She did a killer job on it. The borrower actually wrote me a really good email about her. So that was awesome. I shared that with management and et cetera, et cetera. But, without me also just staying on top of it, us all checking in like every 3 days, we never would have got what we needed. You know what I mean? And the way that you can do that is pre-close checklists. When you have a deal and you know that it's feeling good and you know your box by now, you know what your credit manager likes, you understand your appetite, you know to walk on bad paper, you've got all these things. Know to get a pre-close checklist out, because we're looking for the same things on a lot of different deals. And if you can grab those things up front, you're doing yourself a world of good. Also, shout outs to whoever wrote in. That's amazing. I think it's so cool that people are taking the time to email us and, interact in that way. So thank you for that. I just want to add that as well.
I heard
More
they actually
questions, the
wanted
better.
that to talk to Sterling, but since he's not here, we'll save it for us.
Next week.
I recently had one that we closed last month. Similar type of situation. Actually, cool business. One that I had never financed before in my career. It was a private security firm out in Las Vegas. For big wigs, whales, whoever's coming to town, they need a security firm. I guess. I don't know. I'm not the Vegas type. But we had an individual who was familiar in the industry. So we had a good guy, decent background, originally from Canada, just got his permanent resident alien, living in California, going to move to Vegas and acquire this business. Decent sized deal, great cash flow, obviously all airball with him not having any assets or any really assets underneath the business. The main operating guy was going to be not the owner, but the guy below him was going to be our key man, primarily because in the state of Nevada, you have to have a very specific license in order to operate a security company such as this. So we had it structured phenomenal. We'll have him write an employment agreement. That way we can ensure that he stays on board and he's incented to stay and keep that license until our new guy gets certified to get his license, which generally takes about 9 to 12 months. Perfect structure, right? Everything's going fine. Buyer, seller, absolutely love each other. They get along great. Things are going well. They're spitballing on how they're going to grow the company after the new guy comes in and buys out and the other guy goes and retires, until he gets to know this ops guy. And they are just water and oil, can't stand each other. They're just not getting along whatsoever. So a buyer calls me up and says, I'm firing this guy. It's the first thing I do. I'm getting rid of him. Like, I know how to operate this. I know how to make it happen. I'm like, well, how are you going to operate without a license, dude? He's like, I don't know. We'll figure it out. I'll use the seller's license. You can't use the seller's license. Once he's bought out, he's gone. But I tell you what, the new SBA SOP rules have changed. Let's say you want to keep the seller in for 5%, maybe 10%, make the acquisition, keep him on board, personally guarantee the loan, unsecured personal guarantee since he's under 20%. Let's go. He already likes you. You already like him. You love picking his brain. Use his license. Once you get yours, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, come back and I'll finance the acquisition of his remaining 10%. It's a done deal. It was done. I mean, it was real easy for him to talk to him about it. Saved our butts in closing, got the deal done 2 weeks later. It was great. They wrote up that purchase agreement within like 3 days. It was phenomenal. Worked out really well.
We're going to need that firm when we go to Vegas, Ryan, but that's probably a conversation for
I already
after
got it.
This
I already got it. Hey, in November, man, when we're down there, we'll hire them. They'll be around us the whole time, man. We'll look like celebrities. More celebrities than we are, because this podcast is about to blow up. We'll be the BDO Show security guard.
Well, I wanted to thank everybody for listening in today, and go ahead and keep submitting topics so that we can discuss them, and any questions you guys may have and you're interested, just shoot them over our way. Whether it's all of us or some of us, we're going to love to answer them either way. So go ahead and send those over to the BDO Show at gmail.com, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.